Okay, folks, Sty is back. Here we go with another Sty story. Back at the cabin out there in the Rockies. This little story I like calling Caroling with the Coyotes. As I had said in an earlier video, I hiked down off that mountain. The total combined hike out of the mountain was probably 9 miles. 6.5 miles of that during the winter was totally closed off. You had to snowshoe, hike, depending on the conditions, out during the winter. There was no other way to get in and out. And I didn't have a snowmobile. If I would have had a snowmobile and broke trail regularly, I could have had a good snowmobile trail going back and forth to the cabin. But we tried to live as rustic as possible. We wanted to experience what it was like to not have as many modern conveniences and to keep it as minimal as possible. So it meant that you had to stay healthy and you had to actually work just to get through the day. So I hiked down off that mountain at least 5 days a week. And what I did was I would hike down off the mountain, and I had an acquaintance that I would work for, and I would work in exchange for different things, different supplies and things that we like to have at the cabin. One of those supplies was unleaded gasoline in 1-gallon cans to burn in our Coleman lanterns. Buying white gas was prohibitive. It was too expensive. When you could burn a high octane, you use premium unleaded gasoline, and it worked just fine. So we used Coleman lanterns, and gasoline was cheap back then. So I worked for gasoline and other things. So I hiked off that mountain at least 5 days a week. Well, it was right around Christmas time. I'd say like 2 or 3 days before Christmas. And I had hiked down to town, and I was just excited as could be. I went to the post office. We rarely got mail. My family wrote to us occasionally. About once a month we'd get a letter or two from the family back home, back in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And I went to the post office, and here's a big box. It was a big box, and it was heavy. And I thought, now how in the world am I going to get that back to the cabin? So there I am out on the front stoop of the post office with this big old box, and I got my backpack on. And all I had with me that day was my .44 Magnum. I carried a Colt .44 on my hip, usually. But I had left my rifle back at the cabin. So my rifle and shotgun were back at the cabin, and I just had the sidearm with me. And I had to come up with a way to get that box back up to the cabin, or find somebody to keep it for me until I could find a way. Well, I had to stop at the grocery store to, I can't remember what it was. There was something I had to get, some small item. So I stopped at the grocery store. It's a general store in that little town. And when I walked in there, right by the door, leaning against the wall, are all of these plastic toboggans. And I looked at those and I thought, hey, one of them toboggans would work nice. That would get that box home. So I looked at the toboggans, and lo and behold, back then they were like $4.50. And I thought, wow, to us $4.50 at that time was a lot of money. I said, yeah, but I'll get a lot of use out of it. So I bought one of those toboggans. So off I went, headed home with my toboggan. Well, because I was diddling around town at the end of the day so long, the sun had set by the time I got off the highway onto our trail home, which then was 6.5 miles up the mountain, all uphill from there. And it had snowed throughout the day, and we had gotten almost 6 inches of snow during the day. So I pulled my snowshoes off my pack, put snowshoes on, and started pulling that toboggan with the big box on it up the mountain. And I didn't get but maybe a mile, mile and a half. And all of a sudden I started seeing shadows along both sides of the trail following me. And they were moving quite quickly, and I couldn't get a good look at anything. The moon hadn't risen high enough for me to see well, and I was just hoping that I didn't have a small pack of timber wolves following me up the mountain, because it had been a rough early winter. We had about 4 weeks of terrible sub-zero weather and lots of snow. Lots of snow. So all the predators were hungry, that's for sure. Well, I got about another mile or so up the trail, and then the moon crested came up. And it's just like you turn the lights on out there, all that snow. Then all of a sudden the shadows took shape, and I could tell what it was. Here I had a pack of about a dozen coyotes. Half of them on each side of the trail following me up the mountain. And I was surprised they hadn't made any sound, that they were quietly following me up the mountain. Well, I got within about 2 miles of the home place, and then they got brave, and they came out on the trail in front of me, and I stopped, and I yelled at them, and they just stood there looking at me. And then I turned around, and there I got 2 of them behind me, and I got a couple on each side of me. So I've got coyotes all the way around me. So I started turning fast and yelling at them, get out of there, get away from me, blah, blah, blah. And they ain't going nowhere. And I thought, well, I'll just keep hiking, see what they do. So I just kept hiking towards, there were like 3 or 4 of them in front of me. And they would come off the trail and let me keep walking, but then they'd show up again in front of me again and stand in the trail like they're trying to get me to stop. And I thought, I don't think I should stop again. There's too many of them here. They might get brave. So then I figured I'll pull that sidearm out and fire a shot in the air, and that'll spook them, send them running. Fired a shot off. Didn't spook them at all. They yipped a little bit and they ran off and came right back. Well, then they started, because I wouldn't stop moving, they started yipping and howling and doing a typical coyote cry, and they did that constantly for the next mile, yipping and howling and running around me, and they started getting close. They were getting within 7, 8 feet of me, and they just kept on. Just noisy as sin while I'm trying to walk up that mountain. And typically my hike back home or my hike down in the mornings, it was so peaceful and quiet and pristine. Not that night. Them coyotes were singing all the way up that mountain. I got tired of listening to them. And then I thought, well, this is a real nice Christmas present. I'll get all chewed up before I get home. I sure didn't want that for Christmas. And then the whole Christmas thing hit me. So I started singing Jingle Bells as loud as I could. Jingle bells, jingle bells. And it was like them coyotes liked it and joined in. They were right as loud as I could sing. It was like they had to howl and yip louder to outdo me. And for the last mile, mile and a half to the cabin, they stayed right with me and kept their howling and yipping going on, and I kept singing Jingle Bells all the way to the door of the cabin. And to this day, I don't know if them crazy buggers wanted to have me for dinner or what, or if they were just caroling coyotes. It was Christmas time. I think they were caroling coyotes. So that was quite an interesting animal encounter. I don't think I'll ever encounter again. But that's one of the benefits of being out in the wilderness and experiencing the outdoors, is the more you're there, the more you're surprised, the more amazed you become at the things that nature puts out there that you would never expect. And that was one of those times where I didn't see that coming. Now I'll tell you what, in my next Sty story, I'm going to tell you what was in that big box when I got up to that cabin, and I wonder if it was what was in that big box that had those coyotes so interested. Watch my next Sty story, and you come to your own judgment. Maybe it wasn't me they wanted. Maybe they wanted what was in that big box. So, thanks for watching, folks. Catch you in the next Sty story. Watch our other videos, all of our instructional videos. You know, this is just Sty ramblings. This is just me going on about things. But we have a lot of instructional videos. Watch those. Watch our Lean-To series. Check our webpage out. Jim and Rory say hi. Sty says goodbye. Until the next video. You all have a nice day.